Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Activities for People Living at Home with Dementia. My name is Gail Snyder. I'm the Executive Director for Dementia Friendly Fort Worth, and I am filling in for Martha, who is taking a well-deserved day off. These programs are recorded and are made available for future use through a YouTube channel. And today we have with us the Fort Worth Museum of Science and History, and they are going to be talking about Texas state symbols. Bethany, take it away.
All right. So, like you said, we're going to be talking about Texas state symbols, and I'm going to do our biggest thing first. So, yeah, well, no, I just need to be transferred over.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm assuming you can guess what the first one is.
You need it on the front of a truck.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, so our first state symbol is the Texas state symbol, the large mammal. So the large mammal Texas is the Longhorn. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Longhorns. So they're known obviously for their horns, but they're also known for their diverse coloring. Part of the really cool thing about Longhorns is that they're a hybrid of different cattle that were brought in by the Spanish and other settlers from Europe, and they went feral and bred together. And so because of that, there were no other actual complications for that, which is unusual, except for the fact that they have a very diverse color range. And so they actually they can be gray, yellowy, they can be brown, black, ruddy, and white. And there's also dirty and clean speckled. And so they just kind of range that way. Let's see. So they, like I said, they were brought to the New World by the first cattle that they descended from were brought to the New World by Christopher Columbus and the Spanish colonists. So the first part of that was brought over. And then later, when early U.S. settlers came into Texas, they brought the European breed. And then there was another breed brought in from Mexico. So they have a wide variety of breeds that they came from. Let's see. They have long horns. Obviously, this one is almost 7¼ feet long.
Wow.
So long.
Yeah.
And they range from 6 feet to some can be 10 feet long, but this one's kind of in the middle, I guess. Let's see.
Well, they made out of hair.
I think that's a little bit about what I have. But these are cattle farms. I don't think there are any more feral longhorns, as far as I know. But I see them all the time.
I bet.
Yeah, I grew up, well, we moved to Lubbock when I was senior in high school, so we saw them a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
And my uncle raises cattle, and so we see them a lot when we go visit him.
So when something happens to a longhorn's horns, do they grow back or are they just broken off?
I don't know. Laura.
They are broken off. The outside part is actually made out of the same material that our hair and fingernails are part out of, and they're kind of like a sheath. The interior part that is actually attaches to the skull is kind of like the live part. So if the outside casing, the long part of it, breaks off, that part won't grow back, and damage can be done to, I think they call it a core or a bud, that if the damage is done to those parts inside of the horns, then that can cause problems with them growing back as well. But they will continue, if the end get broken off, they will continue to grow out from the bottom of them, like where they attach to the skull.
Okay, great.
Laura's our resident animal expert.
I know that there's places in Dallas Fort Worth that have longhorns. I've seen them.
Yeah.
I've seen them in pastures around.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. They are all over Texas, but they're actually very hardy. So while they need a lot of food, they can actually live in very harsh conditions, and so that's one of the reasons that they do really well here. So they need a lot of food, but they can live in very, very harsh, hard weathers. So that's just a little bit about the Longhorn. I can move on to the next. We have quite a few that Miss LaShawn Spotted Bear brought us today.
Try not to hit anything as she moves it around.
That's right. You put your eye out with that thing.
It's taller than me, so I have to be very careful with it. So I think we'll move to it's the armadillo button. Yeah. Okay.
A bat.
And
Yes.
eek.
There we go. Okay. So this is the Texas flying mammal. It's a Texas state flying mammal. It's the Mexican free-tailed bat or the Brazilian free-tailed bat. And you also hear them just called house bats because they're really common here. It's the most common bat found in Texas. And where they live can range from like a few hundred to like millions of them, depending on space, food, that kind of thing. So you find them in things like caves and tunnels, trees, and obviously buildings, as that's why they're called house bats sometimes.
Yeah.
They're called free-tailed bats because the tail is actually not connected to the wings, and so that's why they're called free-tailed bats. Some other bats, I assume, have bats that are tails that are connected to their wings, and so let's see. They migrate they migrate to Mexico, Central America, and South America for the winter months, except for some that live in East Texas. Those actually stay. They don't migrate. So that's one thing that's interesting in them. But they do take up residency in Central Texas in the spring, and there are millions of them. So obviously we know that they come out at dusk and then they go back to bed at dawn. There's some nocturnal animals. These specifically eat insects, but they can eat other things. But they eat insects, mostly moths, beetles, flying ants, and June bugs. They're their main source of their diet. They have long, angular, narrow wings. And the really cool thing about bat wings is that they're very similar to our hands, in that their digits here are very similar to our fingers. So they're very similar to our hands themselves, and they have like a little wrist area and like elbow. It's really cool. They can eat up between 6,000 and 18,000 metric tons of bugs annually. So they eat a lot of bugs, which is good because hopefully they catch all the mosquitoes. I'm not a mosquito person, so I really like bats. They're really cool.
If you put up a bat house in your yard, is this kind of bat likely to take up residence there?
Miss Laura is shaking her head yes.
Although it can take years for them to find that.
She said that it can take years for them to find the bat house, but they will take up residency in your bat house. They are the most common bat found, so that doesn't really surprise me, but yeah. Let's see. So females are born in Texas, and they when they migrate, they usually return. When they migrate back to Texas, they return pregnant. So most of the time it's the same year, or which they're coming back to that new year when they return pregnant. And one really cool thing about bats is that they can identify their young in the swarm of other young that is hanging in caves. So they're able to identify them by color and sound, which is really cool. So they all look very similar, but they're able to find their specific child in the cave very easily. Male bats outnumber females in the early spring, and then later on in mid-June, the females swap. They swap, and the females start to outnumber the male. They give birth to one baby a year, and they're born completely without fur and are not able to fly. So the Mexican free-tailed bat ranges from southern Oregon, eastern Nebraska, and to the south part of Mexico. So they have a good range.
As opposed to a lot of people thinking bats, like many animals, are not dangerous. They will not attack you unless they are scared.
Right.
So there's really no danger. Even the one that's flying in your house is more afraid of you.
Oh yes, definitely. I love bats.
Than anything.
We have them in our backyard.
Rebecca said that they have them in their backyard.
They swoop down and drink out of the pool.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you watched them last summer.
Yeah, we'll sit in the pool and watch them while they swoop down and drink around us. It's
That's
pretty
really
fun.
cool. Yeah, I like them because they eat bugs, and I am not a mosquito fan, and they eat them all. Most of
They
them.
are also a great source of fertilizer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Guano.
I was in a cave in Thailand that basically they gathered up the droppings for fertilizer. This huge cave. And it was, there, I don't know how many years it gone on, but it was just completely filled. And they just continually, you could smell the ammonia.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I bet.
But it was kind of a little bit, people, it really wasn't scary. It was just strange.
And,
Yeah.
and unpleasant smelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we lived in a part in Thailand, the little community we lived in actually had in one of the Buddhist temples, it was known as the Bat Temple because the trees were completely filled with bats.
Wow.
And so at dusk, you could see them, a wave just flying through the air. And then if you got up early enough in the morning, you could see them flying back. And they all stayed in the trees in this one temple.
Oh my God.
Interesting.
It was really an interesting, it didn't cause any problems, it was just it was a tourist attraction.
I'm sure it's a norm there, so it's something that they just like. The bats
That-
come out
it-
this time, and they come back this time.
Yeah, it was, I think there was some fruit or something in the tree that attracted them. And so they all came to this certain section, but they're all over the community and you saw them all the time, but they didn't cause any problems.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I understand, I've never seen it, but down in Austin under one of the bridges, they have a big bat collection. I don't know what we call it, a collection of bats, but
A colony.
a colony. Okay, great. And I think what I understand is they fly out just like you said, Steve.
Yeah, there's,
And,
Well, and in Austin, they go right down the river. Like there's basically there's the river at the ground, and then there's like a stream of bats in the sky following the river.
Mhm.
It's really cool.
oh,
Never seen it.
interesting.
I've been once.
It's very fun.
Laura used to live there.
Do they follow the river because of bugs? Food?
Partly, but partly because the bridge is over the river.
Oh,
It's
okay.
like an open area.
It's a big open area because, obviously the skyscrapers and everything, they're all around. So it's an easy way for them to clearly navigate to areas where they can get out and then disperse.
Yeah, apparently they go to a lot of agricultural fields that
Okay.
are
Yeah.
around
Makes
Austin.
sense.
yeah,
Alright.
they love to go to the fields because of all the bugs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we can go ahead and move on to our next animal.
For a bat away.
Yeah, we'll put a bad one. Let's see. Which one's next on the list? All right. Oh, I like this one.
It's cool, I like it.
Armadillo.
Hey.
Armadillo.
So the small mammal of
Holy.
Texas is the 9-band armadillo.
You said that very Texan.
I know. Armadillo. I'm sure my whole life I should probably sound Texan. So they're obviously the size of a small dog. Actually, he's probably bigger than my dog. So yeah, they're the size of a small dog, and they can be found throughout Texas except for the Trans-Pecos region of far west Texas. They're covered in a bony shell that acts like an armor and protects them from predators.
But
And
not from cars.
not from part. No, I feel.
You know how they die? They
Oh.
jump up. They jump up and hit the bottom.
Oh,
That's like their defense mechanism. They
I
get
didn't know
nervous
that.
and jump up. Yep.
Yeah, they jump up. Yeah, that's why they're in the grills a lot.
Yeah,
Oh.
people don't normally hit them. They try to straddle them, and then they will jump up and smack themselves on the bottom of the cart, and fortunately cause their own demise.
I did not know.
Now Miss Stephanie learned something.
Now I always learn something new. They have these claws here because they are diggers. They dig up for their dinner, which is mostly insects and larvae. And they also they burrow to dig dens. So that's where they live, and I assume have their young is in these dens. They eat a lot of grubs, which are that are particularly harmful to agricultural crops. So though they're considered a pest, they actually eat a lot of things that are harmful to our crops. They have virtually no hair, but you can kind of see it under here and under their belly and under the arm. There's a little bit of hair there, but they have not a lot of hair to actually regulate their body temperature. So they will actually forage for food in the cool of the summer evenings and on warm winter afternoons. So they kind of pick, depending on the weather, as to what time they will search for food. And it says they make a great deal of noise when they're foraging for food. So they're loud eaters. But they are fairly easy to sneak up upon. Oh, here you go. They will leap straight up in the air, which is a way to to startle their attackers, which is why they jump when the cars come toward them, which sadly does not help to protect them from a car.
No.
They give birth in the spring, and they produce 4 identical quadruplets. And when they are born, they're fully formed and are able to see. They have their eyes open. And they have a really cool way of crossing water. So if it's a small river, because they will sink because of their armor is so heavy. If it's a small river, they'll walk across the bottom of the river or lake or whatever they're crossing. But if it's a bigger body of water, they will swallow air to inflate their stomach. That will become twice the size of its normal size, and it increases their buoyancy when they're swimming across the water. But it actually takes armadillos several hours later to release all of the excess air from their body. So I assume that they don't try to do that very often. Don't imagine it's very comfortable.
That's somebody like to see an armadillo swimming. I've never seen that.
I haven't either. That'd be very interesting to look at or watch. I'm sure there's a YouTube video of it somewhere.
I'm sure.
And they are the only animal, aside from humans, that carry leprosy.
Yep.
So it's illegal to actually sell live armadillos in Texas.
Mhm.
Because of that.
Mm.
So
They have a kin in Asia called a pangolin.
oh, I love
And,
pangolins. I
Yeah.
love them. They're so cool.
and actually, they have been linked to some of the viruses that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that they are endangered because they are hunted for. The babies are considered a delicacy.
They
They're
yes.
young, and their armor, they use it for different things, clothing, other things. So their species is endangered.
They're a little bit different in the sense they look like it, but their protection is their armor as they roll up completely into a ball.
And they have like their armor's not the same. It's got these weird it reminds me of a dragon, like that you see in like movies and things, because they have these different almost like panels or blades.
Yeah,
just
it's
like
a plates kind of,
plate. Yes.
yeah.
And they're like together, and it kind of reminds me of armor from like medieval times, where these plates are just built up on top of each other. It's really cool. They're really interesting animals too.
Yeah.
So that is a little bit about our armadillo.
Okay.
Folks, I'm going to have to leave. I got another call. Thank you so
All right.
much very much,
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bethany and
Steve.
folks.
Bye,
I
Steve.
will see you tomorrow. Okay.
All right.
Alrighty,
Bye-bye.
thanks,
And I
Steve.
hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Bye-bye.
So if an armadillo doesn't run into a car or vice versa, what's their lifespan?
Yeah, it's a penguin.
Oh, yeah.
Miss
Yeah.
Laura.
Usually about 3 years, maybe 5.
3 to
Okay.
5 years.
They're not known for their longevity.
Okay, thank you.
So can everybody see the picture that I shared?
Yeah.
That's the animal that
penguin.
Steve was talking about.
They're so cute. I love them.
And it does, you can kind of see how it would completely roll up in a ball.
Yeah. They look pretty prehistoric.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What do we want to do next? We can move on to find it. Okay, let's see if we can see this without it being too glary.
Wow.
This is our Texas reptile. Texas state reptile is the horned lizard, or a lot of people I know call it a
Yeah.
horny toad. But it says in my paper not to call it that. I just know a lot of people call it horny toad. So there are several kinds of horned lizards, and they have 4 giant spikes on their head. The 2 spikes, 2 of the spikes are larger, and they're known for their spikes. That's why they're called the horned lizard. They have flat bodies, and they have 2 rows of fringed scales. So, can you guys see that? You know, he's kind of, the jar can kind of glare sometimes.
Yeah.
And my favorite thing about them, when they're frightened, they can squirt blood from the corners of their eyes to
Yep.
scare predators.
Ooh,
Yeah, which I think is really neat.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really cool. You can actually find YouTube videos, see if you would like to.
No,
found
I'm gonna
in-
look.
They're
No,
found
not that.
in arid or semi-arid habitats with sparse plant covering. So drier habitats with less foliage. They dig for hibernation, nesting, and insulation purposes. And they're commonly found, because of that, they're commonly found near or in loose sand or soil. They range from south central United States to northern Mexico. So throughout Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and New Mexico. And it is currently listed on the species endangered list as threatened because they depend on harvester ants as food. And they we've actually, because of the introduction of fire ants, which have overtaken harvester ants, there's less food for them. So they have lost a lot of their food source, which is one of the reasons they're threatened. So yeah, that's just a little bit about the horned lizard, not the horny toad. Because that's what I almost said. We used to see these all the time. When I drive through to go visit family, I see them on the side of the road, and tarantulas. But horned lizard. All right. Okay. Now we're going to talk about our state flower, which is very abundant right now. A little bright, Miss Laura. I'm sorry. Try to get it so it's not too bright for everybody. There you go. Okay, so it's right here. This is just a collection of wildflowers, but our bluebonnet's right here. I actually just went to see a lot of them in Ennis. It was in Ennis this a few weekends ago. So they're known as Texas bluebonnet, Texas lupine, buffalo clover, and they are larger and more sharp. They have larger and more sharply shaped leaves, which on this one, it just has the flower. They and more numerous flower heads than other lupines in that family. They have light green velvety palamately. Am I saying that right, Ms. Rebecca? Palamate, palmately compound leaves. Miss Rebecca is our resident plant flower person. She grows a lot of things. Usually 5 leaflets, and they are born. Let's see. They have a cluster of up to 50 fragrant blue pea-like flowers. So, sorry, very bright. And the tips of the cluster is white. They are annuals, and they bloom between March, April, and May. And they are often planted by highways, by the highway department and garden clubs. And this is one of 6 different lupine species, lupinus species, which is obviously the state flower.
It's like a lot of other lupins too, you can't grow here. They need cooler temperatures, so it's one of the few that you
Can live
grow
here.
Yeah. I'm always trying to convince my husband we should try to grow plants that like other lupins. Yeah.
Miss Rebecca has a very, very awesome garden and greenhouses and a lot of other things. She collects a lot of different things. All right, here's one that I'm sure a lot of you will recognize. And it's our state bird. That's a mockingbird. It's our state bird. I'm sure you know them for their call. They are mostly gray-brown, but they're paler on their breast and belly, and there's a lot of white under their wings, so you'll see that when they fly. You will see the white when they fly. So the northern mockingbird enjoys making its presence known with its call, and they like conspicuously high things. So they'll live in like high trees, fences, eaves, and telephone wire. They like to be high. But they will hop along the ground when they're trying to catch food. They are pretty aggressive when they are trying to get rid of predators and other intruders of their territory. And they live in towns and suburbs, backyards. They're kind of all over the place here. Sometimes they will fly up and hover to grab fruits. And like I said, they're aggressive throughout the year. The females are typically more aggressive towards other females to fend them off of their area and that kind of thing. The males will be more aggressive towards other males to keep them off of their property, territory. Territory is a better word. And they will, it's interesting to see when they kind of are trying to push each other out. They will kind of face each other down right at the line of what they consider their territory, and they'll kind of hop in front of each other until one backs down and flies off, which the one that won technically will kind of chase it away. But if they don't, they'll start like flying at each other and grappling. They eat mostly insects in the summer, but they'll switch to fruit in the fall and winter. And sometimes they'll eat small lizards. So their prey consists of beetles, earthworms, moths, butterflies, bees, wasps, grasshoppers, and like I said, sometimes small lizards. And they eat a variety of different fruit and berries. You can even sometimes see them drinking sap out of recently pruned trees. And they lay between 2 to 6 eggs. And the incubation period is 12 to 13 days, and their nesting period is 12 to 13 days. That's just a little bit about the mockingbird. I know one of our coworkers here, Mickey, had trouble with mockingbirds few years ago in her backyard.
I've heard that mockingbirds can mimic sounds that they hear. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah, that's just a little bit about mockingbirds. They cannot mimic speech, though, as Laura
No,
said.
right.
So they'll mimic sounds, not speech. So they'll mimic other animals,
Other things in the environment.
Interesting. So they'll mimic other animals, but not speak. That's our state bird. Right. So we have our state freshwater fish. This is the Guadalupe bass fish. It's not its correct color because it's preserved. So it's actually an off yellow tint because of the way we preserved it. Usually though, they're generally green in color. And they're found, or they don't have any vertical bars like smallmouth bass, and their jaw doesn't extend like largemouth bass. And their coloration extends lower on their body than a spotted bass. That's how you can tell. And I think they're smaller than quite a few of those. They do not grow very large in size. I think they said the ones that they have found excess about 3.5 pounds is about the biggest that they found. They live in fast moving rivers. So they live in, let's see, they spawn early March and continue through May and June for their first spawning. The secondary spawning is possible, and it usually happens in late summer, early fall. They build nests in gravel for spawning, and preferably do it in shallow water. So the male will build a nest. He will try to attract a female to the nest. She'll lay between 400 and 9,000 eggs, depending. Then he chases the female away, and he stands guard over the nest. So he's the one that protects the eggs and during the incubation period. Most of the young fish and fries and older adults will eat invertebrates, but the juveniles and younger adults will eat more fish. So their diet kind of varies depending on age. And they're found in Texas, and you can find them in the Edwards Plateau, north and eastern Edwards Plateau. You can find them in the San Antonio River, Guadalupe River, the Colorado River, and portions of the Brazos River. And it's actually not a true bass. It's a part of the sunfish family. Yeah. Are any of you avid fishers?
I used to be.
To fish. My boys and my husband like to fish a lot. But he has his best friend's son is the one who really likes to fish. So every time he comes, we have to find somewhere to take him to go fishing. Which we live in the mid city, so there's not a lot of places really around us other than like man-made, like filled little ponds. All right. Becca is an expert on this next one. We have the Monarch Butterfly. So their average lifespan is between 6 and 8 months. They are known, they're known for their giant migration. It brings millions of them to California and Mexico each winter. North American monarchs are the only butterflies that make this massive journey, which is up to 3,000 miles. And the insect has to begin the journey each fall ahead of the cold weather, because if not, if they wait too long, it'll end up killing them. Yeah, you want to talk about it, Ms.
So
Becca?
what's interesting about monarchs is that there's a few different generations. Your normal butterfly has like, it goes from an egg to a caterpillar. There's a few different instars, a caterpillar, then it goes to an adult that either lays eggs or helps the female lay eggs. And then after they lay their eggs, they die. But there's a super generation, and that's the generation that migrates. Now, a normal butterfly lives like 3 to 4 weeks, normal monarch. The super generation, that's the generation that migrates down to Mexico and spends the winter in Mexico and then comes back up to Texas, and they'll be the first butterflies we see first in the spring. And they live like 6 months, I believe, 6-7 months, which is significantly longer than their others. What's also interesting is that the butterflies that go down to Mexico have never been there before. And so they're a few generations removed. It actually takes a few generations. They'll lay their eggs in Texas, they'll hatch, they'll eat the milkweed, they'll grow, they'll go further north. So the ones that are coming down from like New York, Minnesota, southern Canada are the ones that are migrating to Mexico, but no one knows how they know to go there. They just do. They go there, they go to a very specific spot, they roost in specific trees, in this specific spot. For a long time, nobody knew where they went. They just knew that tons of them passed through, usually right around Halloween and Dia de los Muertos.
Dia de los Muertos.
Okay. And normally that's when they're passing through Texas, and but they didn't know where they went afterwards. So I'm sure some of you saw the National Geographic cover when they discovered that. And there's a famous picture of that where they're in the trees, and it almost looks like fall leaves are falling, but it's actually monarch butterflies. And so really their population is very vulnerable when they're kind of hibernating, not really, but because they're all in that one spot. If something happens to that one spot, you can wipe out a really big part of that population. The other thing too is they have very specific host plants for their caterpillars. Their caterpillars will only eat milkweed. They're all different kinds of milkweed, but just milkweed. And so that's, if you want to attract them to your garden, that's one way to do this, to have, that milkweed for them to eat. The other way to attract them to your garden is to have good nectar plants for them to drink, eat from.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, Miss Rebecca's a expert on butterflies.
Just those. Just monarchs.
Just monarchs?
Yeah.
No other butterflies?
We had an Omni film a few years ago called Journey North.
Journey North?
I think
so.
And it was all about the monarch migration. And as part of that, the company that made that film had a training for museum educators that were showing it at the Science Museum in Baltimore. And so I got to go to that and spend 2 days learning obscene amounts about monarch butterflies and all of that.
Right. So that's a little bit about monarchs. So now we're going to move on to cotton, which is our state fiber and fabric. And that was named.
Texas has a lot of state symbols.
Yes, we have so many, and this is only part of them. There is a state symbol for pretty much everything. So this was made the state fiber fabric in 1997. And it's known, Texas is known for its production of cotton, and it's the mainstay of Texas economy and culture. And it is the state's largest cash crop. And is planted on more acres than any other agricultural product in Texas. And Texas is the sixth producer, or the sixth in the world of the production of cotton. And cotton was first grown in Texas by Spanish missionaries. They brought it here and started growing it here. And in 1872 was the start of people starting to migrate into Texas from the deep south and Europe to the Blackland prairies of central Texas. And that's when they began growing cotton. Some people bought farmsteads, but most people worked as tenant farmers or sharecroppers when it came to cotton. It's what's called a seed hair fiber, which there are several species of, and it belongs actually to the hibiscus family. And it needs a lot of sun, but not too much rain, a little bit of rain. And it is when it's grown, it's picked, and then obviously we have to remove the cotton seeds in production. And so they used to have to take them out by hand, but obviously we've gone a little further with technology, and we have now machines that will take the seeds out of cotton. And then it is spun, which is basically it making the fibers into a yarn. So it's pulled into this long strand. And there are millions of little fibers, strands that are a part of one cotton head, I guess you'd call it, the head cotton, sure. But there are millions of little strands. You can take a piece of cotton in your hand and roll it really fast to kind of start a process. I have a friend who actually spins his own yarn. Him and his mom do that. And so they like will spin, have these long spindle things, and they hold it down and spin it. It's really cool. So you can actually still spin your own yarn out of different fibers. So let's see. So fibers are actually naturally occurring threads. So they're, like I said, with long strings. And then we have the yarn, which is a long continuous filament of cotton. And then that's turned into fabric through weaving and other processes. So yeah, that's a little bit about cotton. Anybody have any? I had a family who had cotton farms, so I actually used to live behind the cotton field. Did not do
There are
well.
lots of them in Lubbock.
Yes, yes, tons of cotton and maize, and corn, lots of corn. There's actually a very, very popular corn farm, I guess you'd call it. It's called Guadalupe Farms. You can look it up. And every year they do a themed maze through their cotton field. And they have like, one year it was like the Wizard of Oz, and one year it was like, obviously Texas Tech is a few years of that. But they do a different one every year. And so they'll make an image in the field, and then they'll have these little cards or sheets of like questions to help kind of direct you through the maze. And so it's a lot of fun. That one is one that I know really well. We used to live out in Cooper, which is right on the outside of Lubbock. And we were surrounded by cotton fields, which did not do well for my mom's allergies, I will say. Not good. Yeah. So I do have one last thing to show you. One last state symbol. This is our state dinosaur. Let's pull that up. There it is. Okay. So this is actually just a vertebrae of the state dinosaur, which is called the Biloxisaurus jonesii. Have any of you guys been to near the Biloxi River? Been around there? Yeah.
Yes.
So the Biloxisaurus was found on the Jones farm near the Biloxi River. And so that's why it's named after the Jones family's farm, and then the river that was found near. I believe, if I'm right, this one was, or the first, what we call type specimen, is like the first piece of, it's the first bone or fragment of whatever you find. It's the first of its thing. Was found by a young boy, right, who was hiking with his family, and they came across it. Actually, they came across a few of them. There are parts, when they started excavating, there are parts of 4 different dinosaurs, and they knew a group died together there, but they don't know why. They assume it was a forest fire. They have some like hypothesis that it was a forest fire, but they're not quite sure. So the Biloxisaurus is actually a sauropod, so it's a long neck. It's 4 legs, long neck, and they started excavation in the mid 1980s, but then the second excavation started in 1993 by our museum, and the Southern Methodist University. So this actually is one of our favorite pieces. It was it's dated to the early Cretaceous, which is between 112 million years ago and 95 million years ago. And it was, like I said, a four-legged sauropod. Actually, if you've been here and you've seen a giant skeleton when you walk in, it's the giant long neck dinosaur that's in our main entryway. So that's the Biloxisaurus shinzai. And it was a plant-eating dinosaur, weighed about 20 tons, and stood between 60 feet high. It was about 70 feet long. It was 60 to 70 feet long and 12 feet high. And its neck was actually 26 feet on its own. I believe this is a tail vertebrae. This part of its tail. So yeah, that's just a little bit about our state dinosaur. So we have a state symbol for almost everything. Do you have any questions or comments? All right.
So do we have a state seashell?
Yes, we do.
Oh, lightning well.
Lightning whelk, okay.
Yeah, we have a state symbol for almost everything.
There's a state crustacean, our favorite. It is the Gulf shrimp, which is both tasty and plentiful, according to the Texas State Legislature when they made it the Texas State Crustacean. We like to work tasty and plentiful into conversation now because of the Texas State legislation.
No, you're fine. No, you're okay.
You see, tell me.
Oh, you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah, that's just a few of the things that we have here that are state symbols.
Cool.
Does anybody have any questions about any of the state
No.
symbols?
Did I miss anything between monarch butterflies and cotton balls?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So is the dinosaur park that is in the area, is that on the land where the dinosaur?
I know it's near it.
The Jones Ranch is a private property.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure like where the two are in relation to each other.
I know that they're near each other, and because they found the dinosaur on the Jones Ranch, they started kind of looking outward from there, because usually if they find a fossil, there's more other fossils to be found in the area. And so once they find something that big, they start to look out, they start to branch out to try to find other places to excavate, which is probably why it became so popular for Dinosaur Valley in the area. So
Great.
are there any topics that you guys would be interested in for our next segment? You guys want to just make a list? I can try to come up with things to fit most things. We have a very big history collection and a very big taxidermy science collection. So if there are like specific animals you're interested in, or if there's a specific topic in history that you might be interested in, I can talk to our collections people to bring more of that kind of stuff out. So you guys can make a list and send it to Gail, or you can really send it to Gail and she can send it to me, and then that'll be I think the easiest way to do that. But we always like to have people tell us what they want to see rather than us coming up with something and not be super exciting for everybody.
This was great, though.
This was great, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening to me talk. I am obviously not an expert on state symbols, but I do have a lot of good people who have had a lot of research done for state symbols, so that helps a little.
You did very well.
Right, so that's all I have. Is there anything else, Gail?
I think that'll do. Thank
All right.
you so much, Bethany and your team, for a great presentation on the Texas symbols.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
let's take a peek and see what's up for tomorrow. And don't go away because I have a special question for everybody when we get all finished. Is my screen sharing?
Yep.
Yep.
Tomorrow, join us for Graham Jones, who will come with his guitar and do vocals. And Graham is a singer-songwriter. So sometimes he shares some of his original music with us. So join us tomorrow at 10:30 for another great session of Texas Winds.